Hey guys, Sensei Tom down here at Tora Martial Arts Academy. In this video today, I want to explore this concept of the traditional Japanese karate blocks, which have these sort of chamber positions, we refer to them as, and I want to explore exactly why we do these chambers and what the application is. When you first learn these motions, the down block, the head block, the chop block, the outside block, you're taught that each block has a corresponding chamber, or sort of a preparatory position, to then execute the block properly. And most of the time students are told that the chamber position is just so that the blocking mechanics are correct and that the position is correct and all that sort of stuff. They're not really explained as to why the chamber is the way it is and what the deeper application of it is. But that's something I want to get into today so you guys can understand that a little bit more fully. Each of these four blocks, the chamber position, actually has application that most people don't realize is there. So I'm going to go through each of the four so you can kind of see what's happening here. Let's start with the head block. This is the head block chamber, and this is the block. So as a beginner, you might be taught that if somebody steps in to throw a punch, you might chamber and then step back with a head block this way or something like that. Obviously, if I make a two-part block to her one-part punch, I'm going to be a little bit slower. Plus, since I'm reacting to her, it's going to be slower anyway. So it's a little inefficient to do this. If I just wanted to block her punch, I could just parry it like a boxer. That would be much faster, much simpler. So what's the whole purpose of doing this? So I'm going to explore each of these four blocks here. So again, the head block, the chamber position is this cross position here. So as she throws the punch, here's my chamber, okay? And then the block itself is actually going to be a forearm strike driving up under the neck. So what was thought of as a block is actually not a block at all. It's actually a counter strike. So the chamber and block actually becomes a block and a counter strike. Let me show that one more time, nice and slow. She punches, there's my chamber, and then the block itself is again driving up underneath the neck. Another way the head block can be applied is for a grab escape. Let's say she grabs my wrist while my hands are up this way. I can chamber and block, and then I can counter punch to the body. So that's another way that head block can be used to strip the grip off and then throw your counter punch, okay? Let's move on to the down block. Here's the down block chamber and the block. Chamber and the block, okay? So there's one particular thing going on here. For the front kick, again, if I throw the chamber and block here, I'm going to be a little bit slow reacting to that. So what this is actually a low version of the brush trap. As the kick comes in, both hands, one and then two, are actually interacting with the kick this way. One more time. One, two. I can even hook here and try to move in for a sweep of some kind is a way I can follow up. The down block position can also be used to counter a punch and punch to the body at the same time. When she steps in for a punch, that can be my down block chamber here, and then the block itself might be a groin strike of some kind, okay, or a strike to the lower side of the body. Okay, so that's the down block position. The down block can also be used to strip a grip as well. She grabs the wrist, there's my down block chamber, and then there's the block itself. Okay, so three different ways that down block can be applied. Let's move on to the chop block. Okay, this is the chop block chamber. It looks a lot like the down block, except my fingers are extended, and then the block itself is here. Okay, two ways that can be applied. As the punch comes in, here is my chamber, and then the block itself would be a counter strike, the knife hand to the neck here. I could follow up in a lot of the same ways that I do with some of my other self-defense techniques. So aside from going the outside of the punch here, I can also use the actual chopping hand itself to come inside for a brush trap, kind of like I would for some of the Kali or the JKD trapping applications. One more time on that right punch. Here. So that chop block can also be applied as an inside brush trap, okay? Another way I like to use my chop block is for a cross grab, okay? After I rotate, and this is something my yellow belts need to know for their exam, after I rotate and I escape, look, I'm in that chop block chamber position. So one way I can use the chop block is as a follow-up to that wrist escape, okay? It's the same thing. It's the chop block position, and then I follow up with that knife hand to the neck. The last one is going to be our outside block. Here's our chamber, and here's our block. There's the chamber, there's the block. So again, if she threw a punch, it wouldn't make sense for me to go 1, 2. That's way too slow. So just like the chop block, I can use this top hand as a brush trap. 1, and then I can come in with the counter punch. That's one method that can be used for the outside block. The other one is that the arm that's straight that turns into the block can actually be a counter punch. So when she throws that right hand, there is my chop block chamber. The top hand is blocking, and the hand that was thought to be the block is actually a counter punch. And that's actually very similar to a split entry that we use in our JKD. If she gave me a jab cross we can split entry and hit the cross to the body. That's almost exactly the same as that outside block chamber. And then the block itself can be a few things. Give me that right cross again. The block itself could roll over the top for a back fist or a hammer fist strike. The block itself could be used to strike to the elbow and do some damage to the arm. Or as she gets a second punch off, I can use the block to actually deflect that punch and then step in for another counter strike. Okay? So that just shows you some different ways that your blocks can be applied. So what seem like very simple techniques that don't really have any good rhyme or reason actually have some pretty interesting applications behind them, several of which I use in a lot of the self-defense technique that I teach for grab escapes and counter punching as well. And you can see there's some crossover into the other arts, the JKD trapping and the Kali trapping, and some of even the jiu-jitsu escapes as well that I teach. There's a little bit of overlap there. Anytime there's overlap from one art to another, as one of my sensei used to say, that ribbon of truth is probably pretty indicative that there's probably something of great value there. If you see multiple different arts showing similar applications, there's probably a good reason for that. There's probably something very valuable and very useful there. So there's a lot of really good information in here. So take your time when you're practicing these blocks. Obviously, at first, we teach just the mechanics so you get the basic movement down. And then once you get past that level, then you can start exploring all the different applications contained within, because there's the wealth of knowledge just inside of the blocking chambers there. And a lot of people aren't taught these things because they never learned them from their instructors either. So it's a lot of really neat information in there. All right, guys, explore that. There's a lot of good stuff there, so have some fun with that. We'll see you guys next time.